When systems fail, where do you turn for truth and resilience? Welcome to the Resilience Realm with host Dawn Westmoreland, a syndicated radio talk show host, retired Air Force veteran, author, and resilience advocate. Each week, Dawn brings powerful voices, attorneys, mental health experts, veterans, and leaders sharing courage, boundaries, and real-world resilience strategies. Dawn broadcast on the Pacifica Network and WPVM FM LP 103.7 Radio Asheville. This isn't just a show, it's a movement for courage, ethics, and justice. Tune in Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern.
So good to be back with you today. I have someone who is my new hero, Chuck Gallagher. He resides in the Raleigh-Durham area, and I just got back from Speaker's Edge training, which is training for speakers, and he produced a high-end video. I'd like to welcome Chuck on the show today.
Dawn, it is great to be with you.
Thank you. And, this isn't just about your qualities that you're putting out today. This show is about resiliency, courage, and I don't want to steal the show by even telling people about you, but I'd like you to share some resilient experiences you've been through because they're mind-blowing, and I've been talking about you since I learned about you from my mentor, Robert Stack, and there are a lot of people who know you, Chuck, now.
Well, one could say I'm famous or infamous. I'm not sure exactly which word works better. But to put it in simple terms, especially when you're thinking about resilience, back in the 80s, I was a tax partner in a CPA firm. I'd testified before Congress. I'd written articles in national magazines. I'd taught continuing education courses in 30 states. It was a great time, except I was stupid. I had too much debt, and in a moment of weakness, embezzled money from a client. That's not a really smart thing, by the way, Dawn, for a CPA to do. Let me just say that on the front end. I paid it back. I did it again. I paid it back. And at some point, it just occurred to me, maybe I have my own private hedge fund. And so over the course of 3 years, I created a Ponzi scheme. Now, I didn't know at the time what it was called, but Bernie Madoff made that pretty famous. So I think everybody's at least heard of it. And there is one thing about a Ponzi scheme, and I'm going to shut up, but there's one thing about a Ponzi scheme that is true. It will always collapse. Every choice we make in life has a consequence, and that series of choices created a series of consequences.
Mm-hmm. Chuck, we're going on 8 years, quite a few people who have been incarcerated, and every single one of them had an aha moment, and they realized, well, I made a mistake, and they changed their lives, and a lot of them are out there thriving. They're doing good. They're helping other people. What did you get from your experience?
Well, it may come out to be more than just these few things, but one thing was, it occurred to me that no matter what you do, there is going to be a consequence. You will reap what you sow. So when that proverbial card was pulled from the house of cards that I had created, and this all came crashing down, I had a choice to make. I could fight it and pretend like I'm a victim and woe is me and this should never have happened, or I could own it. And I decided I may as well own it. I may as well just accept the fact that I had to admit to my wife and my partners in the CPA firm that I had become nothing more than a liar and a thief. And as painful as it was to admit, when you accept responsibility for it, there is a shift that takes place. It doesn't mean it becomes easy, but there is a shift that happens that at least allows in the universe the possibility that there can be an outcome better than what appears to be at the moment.
Yeah. Well, Chuck, you don't know this, but I've been on YouTube listening to a lot of your videos because since the 5 of us, counting myself, had your training this past weekend, I know between us, we're going back and forth and we're like, wow, this is amazing. The videos, the heart, the truth. You talked about in one of your videos, your cellmate, you talked about Ted and you talked about the drugs and going to, I think it was middle school.
It was.
Trying
Yes.
to prevent people from making mistakes. I remember, and I probably was in middle school when the prisoners came and saw us, and it was terrifying to see them in handcuffs because they were in handcuffs. I mean, it was intentional. But I want you to share some insights that your cellmate shared with you, if you don't mind, because they were
I,
powerful.
I don't mind at all. There were two things, Dawn, that really hit. But let's stick with where you were. Um, it was really cool in prison because when you're in prison, you're incarcerated, you don't get to do anything. There's just nothing of any substance that feels normal. So when one of the guards came and said, "Would you be willing to go out and talk to middle school students? We're going to pick 5 people." Honestly, I was ecstatic. It was like, you
Mhm.
know, almost a breath of fresh air. There's really human beings out there, and we're not all incarcerated. But Ted was one of the ones that went out with me, and he had been incarcerated for a long time
Mm.
based on drugs. In fact, 70% of the people that were incarcerated were all incarcerated for drugs. It wasn't just a white collar criminal kind of place. It's not what people make it out to be. But he was incredibly powerful because, um, you know, he basically had said to the students, there's really only 3 things that are going to happen from this. It's going to be poverty, it's going to be prison, or it will be death. And it was so impactful to me because I'm talking, as a white collar criminal about making choices in life, but none of those choices were as prophetic and profound as Ted's. And it really, I watched the students' eyes and saw how it impacted them. And it just struck me that from the worst of circumstances, Ted could be an emissary for a better set of circumstances, if nothing more than reaching one child who might think, I remember that guy and I don't want to be like that.
Mhm. Yeah. When I joined the Air Force, I was about 20 years old, and I grew up in the second poorest county in Florida. It was North Florida. And I remember telling my enlisted, recruiter, because I was going enlisted with a little bit of college, telling him I wanted to join the Air Force. So they had to ask these series of questions. And they said, "Dude, have you ever tried drugs?" And I'm like, "Ooh," if I say, I tried marijuana once or twice, and it wasn't for me. But I thought if I tell, I won't be able to go in. And they're like, "Oh, you gotta, everybody does it here in Florida." You know what I mean? I just had to share that with you. But this background of yours, how are you taking it today to the speaking where you're talking about ethics?
Well, let me answer your question, but I want to do it in 2 ways. Number one, when I got out of prison, like anybody, um, it's not easy to get a job. I mean, very few organizations want to hire a convicted felon.
Mhm.
Okay. So the first thing I'll say is I took the only job that someone was willing to give me, and that was selling cemetery property door to door. And I didn't start off in college thinking, I can't wait to sell cemetery plots. It just was not exactly at the top of my mindset. Although mom always said death and taxes, screwed up taxes. So I figured death was probably a good possibility. I mean, there is something to be said for these things. But But I did that, and I recognized in that first job, I really better be good at what I do because I'm not going to get many second chances. I mean, the easiest person to get rid of is a convicted felon. I mean, he's already messed up once. Why not? So if there was a reduction in force or whatever, then getting rid of the convict would not be hard. So I needed to be good. And I turned out to be their top salesperson in 9 months. And they asked me if I could teach others, and I said yes. And they asked me if I could manage, and I said yes. Because if they're giving me opportunities, I need to rise to that occasion. Now, the reason I start with that to answer your question is a decade after I was released from prison, I was released in 96. So in 2006, I was a senior VP of sales and marketing in a public company. Okay, now let me just stop for a second. Senior VP in public company and convicted felon don't seem to match. That's just not normal. And people said, how can that be? And I immediately responded, well, every choice you make in life has a consequence. Made stupid choices in the 80s, put me in federal prison in the 90s, made better choices, and I'm a senior VP in a public company. And people said, you should talk about that. And so actually, that's how the speaking began now 20 years ago, is taking the story of resilience and what I had learned, and then being able to share that with others. So maybe, just maybe, there's someone that hears that and there's some value.
Mm-hmm. Chuck, was it hard to talk about your experiences when you got out of prison with others?
Um, well, I'm going to answer it honestly, no, but it's because by that point, I had already shared so much of it, and so much of it became public. Um, it was already out there, so there was no point in hiding it. And Don, let me just say this really quick because don't want to miss it. I'm gray-headed. I might forget things. But this is really important, at least from my perspective, and that is own what you've done. What contribution have you made to where you are? And then be open about it, because if you're not, someone will use that against you.
I believe that. Mm-hmm. And just so you know, Chuck, there's a cure for gray hair, and I apply it every 4 weeks. It's called hair coloring. I know you'd laugh because you have a good sense of humor.
Oh, well, that's good. I like that.
When you talked about your experience, I remember you shared this with us, that you paid everybody back with interest, you were getting your life together, and then boom, knock, knock, knock. There's 2 men at the door. Do you mind sharing that? Because I think it's very important for our listeners to understand your background and what you've
No,
overcome.
don't mind at all. I admitted in the fall of 1990 that I was a liar and a thief, and told the clients that I had stolen money from. I stole money from you. As you can imagine, they didn't like me too much. They kind of hated my guts, but I asked them the question, would you rather get your money back, or do you want me in jail? Because if I'm in jail, I can't earn the money to pay you back. And they all reluctantly, with hate in their heart, said they wanted their money back. So, with the help of family and friends, I was able to raise the money and pay them back with interest. So, nobody lost anything, and they actually made money off of it. And the local district attorney didn't want to prosecute by that point because I'd lost my license as a CPA. I'd lost my interest in the partnership. My wife and I had sold everything that we had. We moved in with my mother-in-law. We were just doing what we could do to try to salvage where we were. And I kind of wiped my forehead and thought, okay, man, dodge that prison bullet. And then in the middle of the summer of 1991, there's this knock on the door. And these 2 men standing outside, and are you Charles Gallagher? And well, Dawn, you live in the South. I live in the South. You know, if you're called by your Christian name, you're in trouble,
Yep.
right?
Yep, you are.
Yes, I am. And they pull out their gold badges. One was from the Department of Labor, wanted to investigate me from stealing money from a retirement plan, which I did. And the other was from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, wanted to investigate me for failing to pay tax on stolen money, which never crossed my mind. I mean, I don't think about it. Who takes their tax return, line 23, other income, stolen money? Nobody does that, right? So, in any event, that's how the prosecution part of it took place. And the federal government felt like I had too much notoriety and there needed to be an example made. And as much as I disagreed at the time, it was the best thing that could have been done. So I can't look back and say, well, they should never have done that. I paid it back. I mean, after all of those things are true. But going to prison was the best learning experience I think I've ever had.
Did you ever forgive yourself for all the things that you felt that you did wrong?
I did. It took a little time, and I had to think about it from this perspective. Now I'm getting ready to. This is going to be that the moment when you step on someone's toes, and somebody listening to this is just not going to like it. But everything that happens, that we do or that happens to us, somewhere there is a contribution that's made.
Mm-hmm.
But we all contribute somehow. It's not isolated in one place. So I broke trust. What did I learn? Well, I learned a lot about myself, but I also learned that by doing that and then asking for forgiveness and paying it back, the people that I took advantage of may not like me, but they had the chance to forgive me. And that's a gift that they gave to me. But that never would have happened had I not done what I did in the first place. So sometimes in our lives, there's things that happen that we might not like,
Mhm.
but when you look at the very big picture of what's taking place, um, I'm an optimist. I see a lot of really positive that's taken place from it. So I can't look back on it and say it's bad.
I get that so much. And I always like to say this, to include myself, we've all done things that could have put us in jail or prison. I don't think I've done anything too terrible, but I've done things that, I've definitely drove too fast on the highway more than a
Sure.
few times. Um, yeah. So you are in the top 25 speakers talking about ethics. Do you think you would be there today with the experience you had? If you did, well, let me back it up. If you didn't have it.
No, that's the thing. I was doing a presentation earlier this week, in fact, and one of the people in the audience is Q&A time, and one of the people in the audience said, "Well, if you had it to do over again, would you do it?" Well, the answer to that question is no. I mean, given a choice, no, because I wouldn't want to go to federal prison. However, I then followed it up and said, but I wouldn't change a thing because had I not done what I did, I would have been a successful CPA. I would have taught tax law. I'm sure it would have been a very positive life. But I would never have had the opportunity internationally to stand in front of tens of thousands of people over the course of 20 years and talk about the story and the impact that all of us have on other people's lives. That would never have happened. So I look back on it today saying, while I am not proud of what I did, I am pleased with the outcome of where it's taken me because it's given me the opportunity to touch lives that as a CPA tax partner in a CPA firm I never would have had.
Got it. Yeah. Chuck, we all love stories. I love stories. Do you have a short story about someone who has been helped by either hearing your experience or maybe mentoring with you?
Well, yeah, let me. I've got so many, Dawn. I've got so many, but let me go back. This is just the synchronicity of how things in life can take place. I come home in November of 1990 and I admit I'm a liar and a thief. And that was devastating, absolutely devastating. We had two little children. My wife was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can trust him.
Mm.
And a local pastor, our local pastor, had come by and he said, would you be willing to talk with? And the gentleman's name was Jerry Stevens, still living today in his late 80s, maybe. In any event, I knew Jerry from church and I knew him from Rotary. Now, we weren't what you call chicken eating buddies, but we knew each other. Okay. So I went over to his house, met with he and his wife. She stepped out. I told him the story of what had happened. He listened very nicely and intently. And at the end, he said, can we pray together? Sure. I'm like, I'll take anything, right? So I left and I went back to see my wife, and she said, "What did he say?" And he said, "He just prayed." And she said, "That's it. That's it. There's nothing else." Because she was hoping that he was going to kind of fix things. But no, there's nothing else. A day later, 2 days later, let me correct that. 2 days later, he calls me and he said his son, a gentleman by the name of Ken, he said his son and his wife were getting ready to have their, I think at the time, third child, and they'd outgrown their house. And the house my wife and I lived in that now we couldn't pay the mortgage on because I was fired and no longer a partner in a CPA firm was a 4-bedroom house. He said, would you be okay if we got two appraisals, averaged them, and let him buy your house for the appraised price?
Mhm.
Sure. Are you kidding? That just took off of my shoulders $300,000 worth of debt that I couldn't pay. And he said, and I know you have a car because I was into cars at the time, driving whatever. He said, he has an old Isuzu. You need transportation. What if we give you the Isuzu and he'll take over your payments on your BMW so you don't have those payments?
Wow.
Okay. I'm good with this. So all of a sudden, close to $400,000 worth of debt is now off of my shoulders.
Mm.
Now, my wife and I at the time were also so bad. We're building another house. And it was a $600,000 house. And back in the 80s, that was a big house. And we were 300,000 into it. So probably 2 weeks later, Jerry calls me and he said, "Could you come over to the house again?" Sure. And he said, "I went over to the house you're building," and he said, "My wife and I were planning on building a house." And he said, "Come in." And he said, "I want you to see our plans," and rolled them out on his pool table. And the house that he and his wife were planning on building was the exact design of the house that we had in mid construction. He said, "Now,
Oh
I
my.
want to be clear. I don't want to take advantage of you, but you can't build the house now that you're building, and we're planning on building this house. You're 300,000 into it. If I take over the debt, will you let me just finish the house? And therefore, I'll take it off of your shoulders." Don, in the scope of 3 weeks, serendipitously, almost $750,000 worth of debt that was on my shoulders and my wife's shoulders was eliminated. And I, to this day, believe it never would have happened had I not been willing to go back and just accept
Mm.
I've screwed up
Hmm.
and I'm responsible and I have to be accountable for what I've done. Had I taken the attitude that I'm a victim in this big thing, none of that would have happened and the outcome would have been dramatically worse.
I can see that. Wow. I've had family members incarcerated. Every single one of them came out bitter and mean. They said prison made them mean. One of them was in Rayford, but you chose to be empowered. Did you ever feel like you couldn't be empowered at all? Were there ever moments, Chuck?
There were plenty of moments in prison when you wonder, why me? Why am I here? Couldn't it have been different? I mean, I'm a human being just like anybody else. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, time out. I paid everybody back with interest, for God's sake. I've lost everything. Why am I here? Why didn't you just give me probation? You can convict me, but give me probation. But no, it was prison. What I learned while I was there was you have a choice. And gosh, I see this everywhere I turn. You can be a victim or a victor. And that is a choice. So if I come out and I'm mean and angry and crusty and it should never have happened and blah, 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 which just drives me crazy, I'm choosing to be a victim. And victims draw energy from people. If you've ever been around people with a victim mentality, man, they can suck you dry
Yeah, like a
because,
vampire.
like a vampire, because they're pulling your energy to feed their energy. Well, I have no tolerance for that because it's literally a matter of choice. I was talking with a guy a couple of years ago now, got out of prison, and he was like, what should I do? How am I going to? I said, do what other people are unwilling to do. Well, what does that mean?
Mhm.
Can you hammer a nail? Yeah, then go hammer a nail. Put on a roof, do roofing. Ride a garbage truck. He said, garbage truck? I'm like, whoa, time out, Jack. Think about this. If you rode on the back of a garbage truck, because there's not a whole lot of people want to do that, you would find their routes. And probably if you were good at it, you'd think, I wonder how I can be competitive. And I wonder who has an old garbage truck that they want to sell that they might sell to me and let me make payments on it because now I can start a garbage company and in 10 years you'll be a multimillionaire because that's a big business. But if you on the front end think, well, I'm above being on a garbage truck, you're missing your opportunity.
Oh my, that reminds me, my father's been gone 9 years and he retired Florida Power and Light as a lineman 35 years. I remember him going out west and the only job at a ski resort, because he loved skiing with my stepmom, was a janitor and he took it.
Yeah,
He didn't have to, he had plenty of money and he cleaned toilets so that he could ski for free. I was like,
right.
wow.
Oh,
And
yeah.
sure, there were some interesting stories and such. So yeah, empowerment's the way to go, isn't it?
Well, it is. And it's unfortunate that um, if you get caught up in a victim mentality and you
Mhm.
draw energy from that, it's sometimes hard to think, well, wait a minute, there's a lot more energy out there on the positive side of things when things are going right. But the truth is, it is always a bit of a choice.
Mhm.
You're not, I mean, I grew up in a housing project. The assumption would be if you grow up in a housing project and you're poor, that you're never going to amount to anything. That's not true.
Oh, no. Mm-mm. No, you're a shining example of that very much. So do you have a quick story about somebody you've helped? We're down to the last minutes.
Well, here's the thing. I will say this to you. When I speak, there is always someone that will come up and that will feel comfortable sharing their story, either of themselves or of someone else.
Mhm.
And so you find at times that you help people, but in the most unexpected ways. And I will be honest in saying this. It's probably good that I get the opportunity to speak or write and share my book, etc., but I don't know all of the people that have been somehow touched or helped by it. Because if I did, that could feed your ego, and then your head's too big for a conversation like we're having. What I do know is that if you share in truth the light of who you are, and the circumstance you've been in, so it empowers other people to see and believe that your history does not create your destiny. If you can do that, then I don't need to know the who I helped. I just need to know that it helps.
Yeah, I don't know who to give credit to, but there's a quote, you're always on parade and you never know who's watching you.
True.
So no doubt you have influenced people that might have rethought doing something that could have got them in trouble.
Yeah, and it may be they need to get in trouble in order to learn the lesson. Some of us can learn it by hearing it, like from this conversation, and others may have to experience it. But the truth for all of us is whatever has happened in our past does not create the destiny that we can create. It is history. I can't change the history. I have control of where the destiny takes me.
I listened to your video, one of your videos, I forgot the title, and you said that, and I was like, yeah, that's so true. Our past can define us to be better people if we allow it to be. So, where can we find your book? Tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, the first book I have written was called Second Chances. And I've been told I should have titled it different, but it is what it is. And of course, like any book, I've written six. You can find them on Amazon.com. Just go to Amazon and type in Chuck Gallagher. The books will pop up if you don't remember the title. And obviously, you can find me on the website, chuckgallagher.com. And Don, let me say this. I'm always thrilled to get opportunities to speak and so forth. But if somebody has a personal question and they feel like they need to reach out, I have always chosen to be open to that. So if somebody has a challenge that they need just to talk it through or what have you, I'm happy to make that happen. So I just want people to know that they can reach out without the thought of it's a sales pitch, because that's not true.
Right. Well, you're not that kind of person. I find you to be a very humble and brilliant person. And I'm really grateful that you wanted to be on the show to inspire other people. We're down to last minute. Any thoughts on your mind that you want to share on your heart?
Well, the one thing I'll share is my cellmate was a young man by the name of Buck. He was Buck, I was Chuck. He was a young black man, I'm a white guy. It was Buck and Chuck, Ebony and Ivory. It was kind of fun. But what I found in prison was just because you're there doesn't mean that you're bad. He had more integrity than most in people that I had done business with in the outside world. And we found, the two of us, that we made a lasting impression on each other's life. And
Hmm.
a little over a year ago, it had been 30 years since I had been in prison, and through the help of someone else, ultimately found him. And he and I reconnected and met with each other. And I thanked him for being an angel in my life when I was incarcerated. And he told me a story that really inspired me, because he said he had 5 more years of incarceration left when I got out. And he said, of all of the cellmates he had, I'm the only one he remembered. And he said, you just gave me the optimism that maybe there is something better. So there was a change in a Supreme Court ruling. And because of that optimism, he
Wow.
filed for early release and got 2.5 years of his sentence cut off. And so after 30 years of reconnecting, Buck said to me, you gave me 2.5 years of my life to be with my children and my wife that I never would have gotten. You are my angel. So it, for us, we don't know who we impact or how we impact. We just know that we impact.
Thank you, Chuck. We're out of time. Everyone, you always have the choice to be disempowered or empowered. Choose wisely. We'll see you next time.